After my daughter got married, her husband wouldn't let me visit. One day, I showed up unannounced and saw what they'd been hiding. This is the story of how I fought to save my daughter from the people who stole her mind, and in the process, discovered a power within myself I never knew existed. Subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Now let's dive in this story. Don't enter this room. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob, heart pounding in my chest. The door was already cracked open, revealing scattered papers, strange symbols on the walls, and a photograph of a smiling man on what appeared to be some kind of altar. My eyes landed on a list titled Obstacles to Ascension, with my own name prominently displayed just before Jessica appeared in the doorway. I hardly recognized my daughter. Her once warm eyes were vacant, her expression hostile in a way I'd never seen before. "You'll never see me again," she hissed, a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "You're dead to me." Those words cut deeper than any knife could reach. 3 months earlier, life had been different. Not perfect, but different. As I dusted the framed photographs in my Wisconsin home, I tried not to dwell on the emptiness that had settled in since Jessica had gotten married. 5 years a widow, I'd adjusted to Frank's absence as best I could, but the silence of my phone on Sundays, once filled with family lunch plans, was a newer wound. That Wednesday, I attended a reunion with my former hospital colleagues. What should have been a pleasant afternoon turned into a quiet humiliation. "Martha, your turn," said Diane, eyes sparkling. "Tell us about Jessica and what she's up to these days." Around the table, everyone had shared stories of children and grandchildren. Proud photos passed around with beaming smiles. I swallowed hard. "She's doing well," I lied, forcing a smile. "Very busy with her new job. We don't get to talk as much as we'd like." The truth, that I had received only formal cold messages for the past 3 months, stayed locked inside me. Carol, who had known me for 30 years, touched my hand. "That's too bad that your daughter doesn't have time for her own mother. Frank would be so disappointed." I nodded, maintaining my smile while something inside me crumbled. Back home, I found the anniversary dinner invitation I'd sent returned in the mail. The attached note from David read simply, "Jessica is on a spiritual retreat. We won't be able to attend." I stared at the last photo taken of us together, before Jessica had married David, before she'd started changing into someone I no longer recognized. Her smile had been real then. Her eyes had been alive. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over her number. 3 months of short formal text messages. 3 months of too busy and spiritual commitments. 3 months of losing my daughter inch by inch. I set the phone down and straightened my shoulders, a determination settling over me like armor. "I don't care what they're hiding," I whispered to the empty room. "I don't care what it costs me. I'm going to find out what's happening to my daughter." Little did I know that my simple decision that night would lead me into darkness I couldn't have imagined, and that the woman who emerged on the other side would be someone even I wouldn't recognize. I arrived at Jessica's Chicago townhouse unannounced, clutching a small cinnamon cake, her favorite since childhood. My heartbeat quickened as I approached the door, using Frank's death anniversary as my excuse for the surprise visit. When the door opened, I came face to face with David. At 38, he was undeniably handsome, with perfect teeth and immaculate clothes, but something lurked behind that practiced smile, something cold and calculating. I watched his expression transform in seconds, surprise, irritation, then a mask of cordial welcome. "Martha, what a surprise." "Lovely," he said, effectively blocking the entrance. "Jessica's in her purification meditation. These sessions cannot be interrupted." While waiting in their living room, I surveyed my surroundings with growing unease. The once colorful walls had been painted stark white. The comfortable furniture I'd helped them choose had been replaced with austere, minimalist pieces. There were no family photos, just strange symbols subtly incorporated into the decor. A triangle with an eye and sun rays appeared repeatedly. In the corner, a security camera monitor blinked steadily. When Jessica finally appeared, my heart nearly stopped. This wasn't my daughter. Not really. She was at least 15 pounds thinner, her once flowing hair now partially shaved on one side. Dark circles shadowed her sunken eyes. When she hugged me, her body remained rigid, as if human touch caused her physical pain. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" I whispered, feeling the bones beneath her skin. "I've never been better," she replied in a monotone voice. I've finally found my higher purpose. Lunch was a sad affair, a purification meal consisting of unseasoned vegetables. David dominated the conversation, speaking incessantly about ascended illumination and its leader, Marcus Reed, who had rescued Jessica from her mundane existence. I watched in horror as my daughter, once fiercely independent, constantly looked to David for approval before speaking. When I mentioned Frank, I caught a flicker of genuine emotion cross Jessica's face. David immediately stepped in. Toxic past attachments are anchors, darling. Remember what the guide teaches about cutting limiting ties. That's when I noticed it, a bruise partially hidden by Jessica's collar. When I asked about it, David quickly answered, Jessica had a purification reaction during our last liberation ritual. It's part of the ascension process. As I was leaving, I overheard their muffled argument through the slightly open window. David held Jessica's face roughly between his hands. Your mother is an obstacle to your evolution. The sooner we cut that tie, the faster you'll ascend. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, my blood turning to ice. The daughter I'd raised, bright, independent, loving, was disappearing before my eyes. The man who was supposed to love her was isolating her, controlling her, possibly hurting her. What terrified me most wasn't just Jessica's physical transformation. It was the emptiness in her eyes, as if the essential spark that made her Jessica had been methodically extinguished, replaced with something hollow and obedient. I got into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely insert the key. Whatever was happening to my daughter went far beyond a strange spiritual phase. Something was deeply, terrifyingly wrong, and I was the only one who could see it. In the weeks after my visit, I spiraled into a pit of worry and self-doubt. I called Jessica repeatedly, but the conversations were brief and superficial when they happened at all. David was always nearby, often on speakerphone, monitoring every word. During a routine medical checkup, I broke down when Dr. Wilson, who had been my doctor for decades, asked about Jessica. Martha, your blood pressure is concerning me, she said, reviewing my chart. How are things at home? The simple question unleashed a flood of tears I'd been holding back for weeks. Dr. Wilson listened patiently as I poured out my fears, then suggested therapy to help manage my stress. This situation with Jessica sounds extremely difficult, she said gently. You need support too. I began attending a seniors support group, but felt even more isolated there. While others shared stories about attentive children who visited regularly, I sat silent, swallowing the pain of abandonment. During a moment of desperation, I called Emily, one of Jessica's college friends. I lost touch with her too, Emily admitted. After she started dating that guy, she just disappeared. First, she stopped hanging out with us. Then she stopped responding to messages completely. The last time I saw her, she seemed different, like she was following a script. My birthday came and went without a call from Jessica. All I received was a generic text message that didn't even sound like her. Happy birthday. Blessings on your earthly journey. Gratitude for your role in my physical existence. That night, flipping through old photo albums, I found a card Jessica had written when she was 16. Mom, you're my best friend and my hero. I'll never let anything come between us. The words now seemed to belong to another lifetime, another person entirely. I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I sat at my computer and typed Ascended Illumination into the search bar. The official website appeared sleek and professional, filled with buzzwords about personal transformation, financial freedom, and detachment from society's limiting structures. Photos showed smiling people in white clothing at luxurious retreats, all with the same intense gaze I'd seen in Jessica's eyes. Digging deeper, I found a discussion forum where former members shared their experiences. My blood ran cold as I read accounts of people who had lost their life savings, cut ties with family members, followed extreme purification diets, and participated in humiliating confession rituals. One post particularly caught my attention, written by a woman named Samantha. My sister has been there for 2 years. She sold her house, donated almost everything to the guide, and rarely speaks to us now. When she visits, she seems like a different person. Too thin, empty eyes, unable to maintain a normal conversation without quoting the group's truths. I immediately messaged Samantha, who confirmed my worst fears. It's not just a self-help group, she explained. It's an organization that uses mind control techniques. They isolate members, control what they eat, when they sleep, who they talk to. My sister has lost her identity. When I tried to share my concerns with friends, I received pitying looks and empty advice. She's an adult, Martha. She has the right to choose her path. Or, all young people go through phases. She'll get over it. But I knew better. This wasn't a phase. This was something far more sinister, and my daughter was slipping away with each passing day. I couldn't sleep after my conversation with Samantha. The thought of Jessica being manipulated by these people consumed me. I needed to know exactly what I was up against. For the next several days, I researched Ascended Illumination obsessively. Their official website portrayed them as a wellness organization focused on spiritual ascension and financial abundance. Photos showed radiant people in white clothing, all with that same vacant intensity in their eyes that I'd seen in Jessica. I dug deeper, finding online forums where former members shared their experiences. Their stories made my skin crawl. Accounts of people who had surrendered their life savings, cut off family ties, followed extreme purification diets, and participated in humiliating confession rituals. Many described physical exhaustion from sleep deprivation and malnutrition that left them unable to think clearly. One testimony particularly chilled me. They target you when you're vulnerable. They love the recently bereaved, the divorced, the professionally successful, but emotionally isolated. They offer community, purpose, and validation, then slowly isolate you from everyone who truly loves you. That described Jessica perfectly. She'd been emotionally raw after a painful breakup when she met David. I created an anonymous account and posted a question. My daughter recently joined Ascended Illumination. Has anyone left this group? Can they be helped? Within hours, I received multiple private messages. Some offered sympathy, others shared horror stories. One message directed me to a private support group for families of current members. I joined a video call with the group the following evening. Seeing the faces of other worried parents, siblings, and friends made me realize I wasn't alone in this nightmare. A man named Robert, whose son had been in Ascended Illumination for 3 years, shared his screen to show us a document titled Recruitment Strategy Guide that had been leaked by a former member. They call it love bombing, he explained, pointing to a section of the text. They identify vulnerabilities, then overwhelm new recruits with attention and validation. Once the person trusts them, they begin the isolation process, creating subtle conflicts with family and friends, suggesting these relationships are holding them back. As he scrolled through the document, my heart sank further. There were detailed instructions for reconfiguring belief systems, creating financial dependency, and neutralizing external influences, a clinical term for cutting off family. The most disturbing part, continued Robert, is how they handle those who question the group or try to leave. They call it containment protocol. The document detailed psychological manipulation tactics, including public humiliation, sleep deprivation, and even blackmail using secrets revealed during confession sessions. Another parent, Eleanor, spoke up. My daughter Cynthia tried to leave after they demanded she sell her house and donate the proceeds. They held an intervention where 15 members surrounded her for hours, telling her she was spiritually diseased and would destroy herself if she left. When she finally got out, she was diagnosed with PTSD. I sat in stunned silence, my worst fears confirmed. This wasn't just a strange spiritual phase or a controlling relationship. Jessica had been ensnared by predators who used sophisticated psychological techniques to break down and rebuild people for financial gain. What terrified me most was realizing how perfectly Jessica fit their ideal recruit profile. And now, with her fully immersed in their world, how would I ever get her back? I discovered through the support group that Ascended Illumination was holding a special retreat for high-ranking members. David, as an elite ascender, would be attending. This was my chance to see Jessica alone, without his controlling presence. I arrived at their Chicago townhouse unannounced, heart pounding as I pressed the doorbell. To my surprise, Jessica answered. For a brief moment, before her programmed mask slipped back into place, I glimpsed my real daughter, eyes brimming with tears, lips trembling. A flash of the Jessica I knew. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She glanced nervously over her shoulder, as if expecting punishment for speaking naturally. Inside, I noticed alarming changes since my last visit. More symbols covered the walls. An elaborate altar featured a photograph of Marcus Reed surrounded by candles. Rigid schedules detailed activities like self-purification and fault confession. The refrigerator contained only wilting vegetables and strange bottled drinks with the group's label. "Would you like some purification tea?" Jessica asked mechanically. While she prepared it in the kitchen, I scanned the living room. A notebook lay open on the coffee table. Flipping through it quickly, I found pages of the same phrase written obsessively. "Biological family contaminates ascension," and "To donate is to receive illumination." On another page, a list titled Donation Goals showed astronomical figures, including a disturbing entry. Johnson Property, after completing transfer, $350,000. My property, my home. I noticed Jessica carefully avoiding a closed door at the end of the hallway. When I casually asked about it, she changed the subject abruptly. "It's a sacred space. No one can enter." While Jessica returned to the kitchen, I seized my chance. The door wasn't locked. Inside, I discovered what could only be described as an operations center. Maps covered the walls with locations marked. Lists of names, family friends, Jessica's former colleagues, had annotations like potential recruit, resistant to message, promising financial target. Financial documents scattered across a desk showed massive transfers to Ascended Illumination Foundation. Jessica's savings. Most disturbing were papers indicating plans to sell my house, which Jessica would inherit, along with passports and documents for an imminent move to their International Elevation Center in Costa Rica, scheduled just 3 weeks away. In a folder marked Confidential Recruiters Only, I found a detailed manual on identifying and manipulating vulnerable people. The section titled Ideal Target Profile described Jessica with frightening accuracy. Recently bereaved individuals, professionally successful but emotionally isolated, with access to significant financial resources. I was so absorbed in these documents that I didn't hear Jessica approach. When I turned, I saw a transformation that chilled me to the bone: cold anger, complete detachment. "How dare you?" Her voice was unrecognizable. "You invaded my sacred space." I tried to explain my concerns, but Jessica seemed incapable of hearing me. As if reciting a memorized script, she declared, "You are no longer welcome in my home. Your energy patterns are contaminating my ascension." She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the Ascension Guardians. You have 1 minute to leave, or they'll ensure your removal and process you for trespassing." Devastated and terrified, I was forced to leave under threat of never seeing my daughter again. As the door slammed behind me, I realized with growing horror that I was running out of time to save her. For 3 days after being thrown out of Jessica's home, I barely functioned. I alternated between sobbing uncontrollably and staring blankly at walls. The image of my daughter's cold, detached face haunted me. When had Jessica, my warm, independent, critical-thinking daughter, become this hollow-eyed stranger? On the 4th day, I woke with a clarity that cut through my despair. My nursing career had taught me one vital lesson: emotional breakdowns don't solve medical emergencies, and this was an emergency. I created a methodical research plan using skills honed through decades of nursing. I compiled everything I knew about Ascended Illumination, established a timeline of Jessica's changes, and documented every interaction since she met David. I reconnected with Samantha, who invited me to a support group for families of people in controlling organizations. The meeting was held in a community center basement filled with people whose haunted expressions mirrored my own. "Everyone, this is Martha. Her daughter Jessica was recruited by Ascended Illumination about a year ago," Samantha introduced me. A man with tired eyes approached afterward. "I'm Michael. I was with Ascended Illumination for 3 years, got out 8 months ago." We spoke privately in a corner, his voice low and urgent. "They're not what they seem," he explained. "They start by promising personal growth, but gradually isolate you, control your food, sleep, relationships, even your thoughts. The courses and donations are designed to drain financial resources. When your money's gone, you become a recruiter to bring in new members." Michael revealed the group's leader, Marcus Reed, was actually Jeffrey Pearson, a former salesman with a record of financial fraud who reinvented his identity after prison. They target people at vulnerable moments, after significant losses, relationship breakups, or professional crises, exactly like Jessica was when she met David. My stomach dropped when Michael mentioned David. What about him? Michael's expression darkened. David isn't just a member. He's an elite recruiter, with a history of involving himself with financially stable women to bring them into the group. You mean their relationship was planned? The room seemed to spin around me. Likely. We called them love contractors. Jessica wouldn't be his first target. I learned about the mind control techniques used by the group: sleep deprivation, restrictive diets that weakened critical thinking, gradual isolation from friends and family, and confession sessions used later as emotional blackmail. They create a crisis, Michael explained, make you believe the outside world is dangerous, that only they have the solution. They break you down through exhaustion, hunger, and emotional manipulation until you can't tell reality from their programming. That night, I spread my research across my dining room table: financial records, testimonies from former members, information about Jessica's bank accounts that I still had access to as a co-signer from her college days. The pattern was undeniable and terrifying. In just 1 year, Jessica had transferred nearly $180,000 to Ascended Illumination, her entire inheritance from Frank, plus her savings. David had appeared in her life precisely when she was most vulnerable. Within months, she'd changed her appearance, cut contact with friends, reduced communication with me, and surrendered her financial independence. This isn't a spiritual journey, I whispered to the empty room. It's a systematic dismantling of my daughter's identity. I knew then that confrontation wouldn't work. I needed a strategy as meticulous and calculated as theirs had been. If I was going to save Jessica, I had to outthink the predators who had taken her. I understood now that direct confrontation would never work. People had tried to rescue members from Ascended Illumination before, only to push them deeper into isolation. I needed expert guidance. Through the support group, I connected with Dr. Lawrence, a specialist in helping people leave controlling groups. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop away from my usual haunts. "Martha, you need to understand something crucial," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Your daughter believes she's made this choice freely. Any attempt to force her out will only reinforce the group's message that the outside world doesn't understand or respect her." "Then what can I do? Just watch as they take her to Costa Rica in 3 weeks?" My voice cracked with desperation. "The first step is maintaining open communication, however painful that might be," Dr. Lawrence advised. "Surface-level acceptance is better than confrontation. You need to be the bridge for when she's ready to question." I spent that evening crafting a careful letter to Jessica. I apologized for invading her space and expressed a desire to better understand her journey. I enclosed a small gift, a bracelet that had belonged to Jessica's grandmother, a strong family symbol that might evoke memories from before the group. Next, I began studying the language and concepts of Ascended Illumination. I needed to communicate with Jessica on terms she now understood, to become fluent in the vocabulary that had replaced her normal speech. With legal help, I updated my will and financial documents to protect my assets, not out of selfishness, but to prevent them from being drained by the group if something happened to me. Parallel to these efforts, I started gathering financial and legal evidence about Ascended Illumination. Working discreetly with a lawyer specializing in fraud cases, I discovered preliminary investigations into the group in 2 different states. The most dangerous part of my plan came next. I needed to understand their recruitment and control methods firsthand. Through the support group, I located an upcoming introductory illumination workshop in Detroit, far enough from home that no one would recognize me. When I told Dr. Lawrence and Michael what I was planning, they both objected strenuously. "That's extremely dangerous," Dr. Lawrence warned. "These people are experts at manipulation. Even knowing their techniques, you could be vulnerable." Michael was more blunt. "They'll destroy you if they discover who you are." But I had made my decision. Standing before my bathroom mirror, I began my transformation. I dyed my silver-gray hair a warm auburn. I purchased colored contact lenses to change my blue eyes to brown. I practiced speaking with a slight West Coast accent and created a detailed backstory for Margaret Wilson, a wealthy widow from Seattle seeking spiritual fulfillment. "You're playing with fire," Michael warned when I showed him my disguise. "I have no choice," I replied, slipping the grandmother's matching bracelet to Jessica's onto my wrist. "My daughter vanishes in 3 weeks. That night, I booked my flight to Detroit and registered for the workshop using my new identity. As I completed the online form detailing my fictional wealth and recent bereavement, I felt a chill of recognition. I was crafting myself into their perfect target. Whatever happened next, there would be no turning back. I was stepping directly into the lion's den, armed with nothing but a mother's determination and the desperate hope that it would be enough to save my child. The Detroit hotel hosting the Ascended Illumination workshop radiated false warmth, all gleaming surfaces and unnaturally white lighting. I adjusted my auburn wig, straightened my unfamiliar clothes, and stepped into my new identity as Margaret Wilson, wealthy Seattle widow. "Welcome, seeker," said a young woman with that same vacant smile I'd seen on Jessica. She placed a white folder in my hands. "Your preliminary ascension pack." Inside was a contract requiring me to surrender my phone, agree to surrendering limiting beliefs, and acknowledge that any donations were non-refundable. I signed Margaret Wilson with a steady hand. The day began with what they called physical purification. 4 hours of repetitive movements without breaks for water or bathroom. Around me, 20 participants grew increasingly exhausted. I recognized the technique from my research: physical depletion to weaken mental resistance. During the rare breaks, facilitators hovered nearby, ensuring no private conversations occurred. Everyone was paired with a guide who never left their side. Mine was a young man named Timothy, with sunken cheeks and rehearsed enthusiasm. "How long have you been with Ascended Illumination?" I asked during lunch, a meager portion of unseasoned vegetables. "3 beautiful years of transformation," he responded mechanically. "I've progressed to level 4 clarity. 2 more levels until I reach Elite Ascender status." "Like David Winters?" I asked casually. Timothy's eyes widened with reverence. "You know of Elite Ascender Winters. He's one of the most successful recruiters. They say he's brought 15 elevated souls to full donation commitment this year alone." My stomach tightened. 15 people like Jessica. 15 families destroyed. The afternoon session was called Emotional Unburdening. Participants were pressured to publicly share their most painful memories and shameful secrets. I watched in horror as people revealed traumatic experiences while facilitators took notes. Blackmail material, I realized. When my turn came, I shared a carefully crafted story about my fictional husband's death, incorporating enough real grief from Frank's passing to appear authentic. "I feel so alone," I finished, forcing tears. "Biological bonds are illusory," replied the session leader. "True family is found in ascension. When you release your wealth burden, you'll find connection beyond imagination." As the day progressed, I witnessed textbook manipulation techniques, love bombing, alternate praise and criticism, information control, and subtle denigration of outside relationships. During the final session, my heart stopped. David himself walked in. He scanned the room with predatory precision, his gaze lingering on a young woman who, I'd learned, had recently inherited a substantial sum. Then his eyes met mine. I lowered my gaze, pretending to take notes. When I dared look up, he was approaching. "Margaret Wilson, correct?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your energy signature is quite remarkable." "Thank you," I replied, forcing my voice not to tremble. "I'm just beginning my journey." He studied my face intently. "Strange, you remind me of someone." "I have one of those faces," I said lightly. "Everyone thinks they've met me before." His eyes narrowed. "Where did you say you're from?" "Seattle. Lived there my whole life." Something flickered across his face. Doubt, perhaps suspicion. But then he was called away by another facilitator. As he left, I overheard him say, "Put Wilson on the priority cultivation list. She has significant donation potential." I'd successfully infiltrated their world, but in doing so, I'd also placed myself directly in David's sights. The hunter was now evaluating me as potential prey, never suspecting I was hunting him. The second day of the workshop began with a purification ceremony at 5 a.m. Sleep deprivation, another classic control tactic. On empty stomachs, we chanted mantras for 2 hours while facilitators circled like sharks, identifying the most susceptible participants. During a brief break, I overheard 2 facilitators discussing the day's agenda. "Reed is coming for the elevated selection." "Which ones are ready?" asked the first. "The widow from Seattle has potential. Winters flagged her as priority cultivation." My heart raced. I'd attracted exactly the attention I needed and feared. After another grueling session of limiting belief extraction, all 30 participants were herded into the main hall. The atmosphere shifted palpably as Marcus Reed entered. In person, he was more imposing than photos suggested. Tall, with penetrating eyes and an aura of absolute authority. "Seekers," he began, his voice a hypnotic cadence. "Few are chosen for accelerated ascension. Those selected will join us for an exclusive elevation dinner." Reed moved through the crowd, stopping occasionally to touch someone's forehead in blessing. When he reached me, his eyes locked with mine. I forced myself to maintain eye contact while appearing suitably awed. "You carry interesting energies," he said, studying me. "A lifetime of service to others, a deep loss, and—" He paused, tilting his head. "Unusual determination." My pulse pounded in my ears. Had he seen through my disguise? His hand rested on my shoulder. "You will join us tonight." 8 of us were selected for the dinner in a private hotel suite. I was seated directly across from Reed, with David 2 seats away. The room featured the same altar-like arrangement I'd seen in Jessica's home, with Reed's portrait surrounded by candles. "Before we begin our elevated communion," Reed announced, "let us share our financial burdens." One by one, participants disclosed their assets, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, inheritance funds. When my turn came, I described my fictional wealth in practiced detail. "Impressive," Reed nodded. "Yet these material anchors prevent true elevation. Tonight, we'll discuss the liberation protocol, the path to complete freedom through relinquishment." As dinner progressed, another sparse meal that left everyone lightheaded, Reed detailed how truly committed members transferred assets to the organization's protected spiritual accounts. "Those fully liberated from material concerns join our International Elevation Center," he continued, "where no worldly distractions impede ascension." "The Costa Rica property?" I asked innocently. David's head snapped toward me. "How do you know about that location?" I kept my expression neutral. "I believe someone mentioned it earlier today." Reed smiled thinly. "Indeed, our International Center awaits those ready for complete separation from limiting societal structures." After dinner, participants were led away for individual assessments with Reed. When my turn came, I found myself alone with both Reed and David. "Margaret," Reed began, "your energy signature fascinates us. You've experienced great loss, yet maintain unusual mental resistance." "I've spent my life in self-discipline," I replied. "Have you?" David circled behind me. "Your hands tell a different story. These are a nurse's hands, not a socialite's." My blood froze. I'd forgotten this detail in my disguise. "I volunteered in hospitals for years," I improvised. Reed stepped closer. "Remove your contacts, please." "My contacts?" "Your eyes changed color when your emotions intensified. A fascinating phenomenon." They knew. Somehow they knew. Reed's smile turned predatory. "Now, why don't you tell us who you really are?" "Martha." My heart nearly stopped. The carefully constructed disguise, my entire plan, crumbling in seconds. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Reed's smile never faltered. "Your techniques are admirable, but primitive. We've developed methods to detect interference." He turned to David. "Show her." David produced a tablet displaying security footage from Jessica's home, the very day I'd discovered that forbidden room. The camera had captured everything, including my face, as I examined their documents. "Technology serves the enlightened," Reed said softly. "We maintain comprehensive surveillance of all elite ascenders' homes. Did you think we wouldn't recognize Jessica's mother?" My mind raced. Denying further would be pointless, but admitting everything meant failure. "You're clearly concerned about your daughter," Reed continued, his voice deceptively gentle. "That's natural, if limiting. What you don't understand is that Jessica has chosen transcendence. After being systematically isolated and manipulated," I countered. "Abandoning pretense." David stepped closer, his expression darkening. "We should contact the Chicago Center immediately. Accelerate Jessica's international transition." "No," Reed raised his hand. "This presents an opportunity." He studied me with clinical interest. "Most family members lack your determination. Martha, you penetrated our preliminary defenses. Impressive. What do you want?" I asked bluntly. "The same thing you do. Resolution." Reed circled me slowly. "Jessica stands at a critical threshold. Her financial contributions have been substantial, but her emotional severance remains incomplete. You are the final attachment preventing her total liberation. You mean my death would be convenient, I stated flatly, nursing instincts assessing the nearest exit. Reed laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Nothing so dramatic. We simply offer a choice, continued interference, which forces us to accelerate Jessica's relocation to Costa Rica immediately. Or cooperation. What kind of cooperation? Sign a notarized statement that Jessica's decisions are her own, that our organization bears no liability for her choices, and that you'll cease all contact attempts. David placed papers before me. In exchange, she remains in Chicago for 6 more months. 6 months. Time I desperately needed. And if I refuse? She leaves tomorrow. Reed shrugged. Our jet is always ready. My nursing career had taught me when to fight and when to strategically retreat. This moment demanded the latter. I'll sign, I said quietly. Wise choice, Reed nodded to David. Arrange the notary. When they stepped outside to make calls, I quickly photographed every document with the miniature camera Michael had insisted I carry, disguised as a brooch on my blouse, evidence of their manipulation, their financial schemes, and most importantly, their plans for future ascenders. After signing their papers with a notary they'd summoned to the hotel, I was escorted out with a clear warning from David. Any further interference, and Jessica disappears permanently. Back in my hotel room, I shook uncontrollably. My infiltration had failed spectacularly, yet provided crucial intelligence. I now knew exactly what they planned for Jessica when they intended to move her. And most importantly, I had documented evidence of their operation. As I packed my belongings, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mother, you've betrayed me for the last time. I'm going to Costa Rica tomorrow. Don't try to contact me again. You are dead to me. I clutched the phone, tears streaming down my face. I had just 6 hours before my daughter vanished forever. I've never driven so recklessly in my life. The 2-hour journey back to Chicago became a frantic race against time, my mind cycling through desperate scenarios. I called Dr. Lawrence from the road. They're moving her tomorrow, I explained, my voice breaking. I've failed. Martha, listen carefully, he said. Direct intervention won't work. They'll simply use it to reinforce their control. I don't have time for careful approaches anymore, I countered. I'm going to offer them what they really want. Money. My money. Martha, not just money, I continued. Everything. My house, my savings, my retirement, all of it. In exchange for Jessica staying in the country. They'll take everything and still send her away, Dr. Lawrence warned. No, I said with sudden clarity. I'm going to offer them something better. Me. Despite his objections, I knew this was our only chance. I called Michael next, giving him specific instructions and the address where he could retrieve the evidence I'd gathered. If I don't contact you by morning, deliver everything to that FBI agent we spoke with. At dawn, I stood before the Chicago headquarters of Ascended Illumination. The imposing glass building reflected the rising sun, cold and impenetrable like the organization itself. Inside, I asked to see Marcus Reed. When challenged, I simply stated, "Tell him Martha Johnson is ready to donate everything." 20 minutes later, I was led to Reed's private office. David stood beside him, both men regarding me with calculated interest. "Mrs. Johnson," Reed smiled without warmth, "this is unexpected." "I'm here to make a deal," I said, maintaining eye contact. "My daughter stays in the United States. In return, you get me, and everything I own." David laughed dismissively, but Reed raised his hand, silencing him. "Explain." "My house, savings, retirement accounts, approximately $500,000 total. It's yours, with one condition. Jessica remains here, not Costa Rica." "Why would we accept this arrangement?" Reed asked, studying me. "Because I'm more valuable," I replied coolly. "I have connections to hundreds of retired nurses, all with decent savings, many alone and vulnerable. I could recruit them." Reed and David exchanged calculating glances. I'd appealed to their true motivation, greed. "I want to see my daughter before signing anything," I demanded. Reed nodded to David, who left and returned with Jessica. She looked exhausted, eyes red from crying. "Mom?" she asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" I maintained my composure, aware of the cameras recording every word. "I've come to make peace, sweetheart. I finally understand this is your path, and I want to support you. By joining you. Jessica stared in shock. I continued, choosing each word carefully. Remember when Dad was in the hospital and I promised I'd do anything to protect you? I'm keeping that promise. Something flickered in Jessica's eyes, a genuine memory breaking through the programming. I touched the bracelet I wore, the match to the one I'd sent her. Speaking of Dad, I continued casually. Remember that phrase he always said when we were in danger? About the birds? Jessica frowned. Birds? Yes. When the nest is threatened. I left the phrase hanging, watching her intently. For a brief moment, recognition flashed across her face. Reed interrupted. Enough reminiscing. We have papers to sign. As I was led to another room to begin transferring my assets, I glanced at the clock. Exactly 9:45 a.m. Everything was in motion now. Either my desperate gambit would save Jessica, or we would both be lost forever. At precisely 10 a.m., as I signed away my house to ascended illumination, chaos erupted. FBI! Nobody move! We have a search warrant! Agents flooded the building, tactical gear contrasting sharply with the sterile white environment. Reed's face transformed from smug confidence to stunned disbelief in an instant. You planned this, he hissed, realization dawning in his eyes. I stood calmly. No, Jeffrey Pearson, you planned your own downfall. His face blanched at the sound of his real name. 2 days earlier, I had sat in an FBI field office, presenting everything I'd gathered: financial records, testimony from former members, the manipulation manual, evidence of tax fraud and money laundering. The special agent had confirmed they had enough for a warrant, but needed someone inside. It would be extremely dangerous, he'd warned. I'd volunteered without hesitation. Now, as agents handcuffed Reed and David, I raced through the corridors, searching for Jessica. I found her in an office, frozen in fear, while a woman I recognized from the Detroit workshop, Heather, tried pulling her toward an emergency exit. Jessica, honey, it's over. You're safe now, I called out. Heather stepped between us. Don't listen. It's a mundane trap. Remember your loyalty to the guide. Jessica looked between us, confusion and programming battling across her face. Mom! I stepped closer. When the nest is threatened, the mother bird pretends to be injured to draw the predator away. Dad told you that when you had nightmares, remember? I pretended to surrender to save you, just like the mother bird. The genuine memory, one the group couldn't erase, broke through her final barrier. Jessica pushed past Heather and collapsed into my arms while agents detained the woman. The following weeks were the hardest. Jessica alternated between clarity and relapse into the group's programming. She suffered terrible nightmares, panic attacks, and crushing guilt as she realized how she'd been manipulated and how she'd nearly lost everything, including me. Dr. Lawrence worked with her daily, helping dismantle the layers of manipulation. I attended every session, holding her hand through the worst moments. How could I have been so stupid? Jessica asked during a particularly painful session. I had an education, a career, independence. No one is immune to sophisticated psychological manipulation, Dr. Lawrence explained. They found you at your most vulnerable moment and exploited every weakness. This could happen to anyone. Recovery came gradually. Small milestones became major victories. The first day without involuntarily reciting group mantras. The first night without nightmares. The first genuine smile when reconnecting with an old friend. 6 months later, Jessica and I sat on my porch sharing a quiet breakfast. Her transformation was remarkable. She'd regained weight. Her hair was growing out in its natural style. Her eyes had reclaimed their vibrancy. You risked everything for me, she said, holding my hand. Your home, your savings, your safety. You could have died. Any mother would have done the same, I replied. No, many would have given up. I've met other families who tried and failed. You were different, methodical, patient, strategic. You studied me like a medical case, just as you did with your patients. I smiled. I never imagined using those skills to rescue my own daughter. As the morning sun warmed us, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.